A new life. Maybe the next one will be newer for me. Who knows? Oh my goodness, I think I should start announcing the titles. They're in the bulletin, but I don't normally announce the title for the next week. And last week I announced his title. And I've heard so many wonderful things, mixed feelings from some of you, couples. I'm glad you're still together. So I'm really grateful for that. And because of difference of opinion. And I've had so much fun with this topic this week because I have actually asked people, randomly asked people, hey, what do you think of reincarnation? That's the devil stuff. We don't teach that. That was not a Unity person, okay? Or maybe. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's possible. I really don't care. I got so much going on in this life, I really can hardly manage the next one. So it's really been a fun week talking about and asking people. Don't ask the guy sitting in the sauna with you. It doesn't work, okay? It's like, who are you? Who are you? This is one of those lessons, and this is one of those lessons, my dear friends, when it's never finished. It's just time to get up and give it, okay? So today, obviously, we're exploring reincarnation. Did Jesus teach reincarnation? You know, reincarnation is the belief that the soul, after leaving one body, returns in another to continue its spiritual education. But let's be clear. In the traditional Christian tradition, it's not a central doctrine. And yet the idea that the soul continues on and on, that life is ceaseless, has been whispered throughout the ages. Unity doesn't whisper anything, okay? So it's been whispered throughout the ages. But Mr. Butterworth, in Discover the Power Within You, invites us to look beyond the dogma of the traditional Christian church, and he says, we must recognize all life as a process, a continuing unfoldment. There is no death, only a ceaseless becoming. Birth and death are but doors through which we pass through on our eternal journey towards full realization of the Christ presence within. Whether we call this, he goes on to say, whether we call this resurrection or reincarnation, the essence is the same, that life is eternal, and that the soul is always learning and always growing. Reincarnation simply means the rebirth of the soul into new forms to continue its journey of spiritual growth. Reincarnation is not punishment or reward, but reincarnation is opportunity. It is a continuation of consciousness. Every life is a classroom, and every experience is a lesson. From this perspective, life is ceaseless. It is a ceaseless opportunity for awakening and awakening and awakening again. Obviously, many spiritual traditions has taught and believes in reincarnation. Hinduism, the soul, Atman, is reborn until it reaches spiritual liberation, or moksha. Buddhism, the cycle of rebirth, continues until enlightenment is achieved. Greek philosophy, Plato taught the soul returns to continue learning virtue. And Judaism, in Jesus' day, some sects, such as the Essenes, that we truly believe that was influential in Jesus' life, believed in pre-existence. The soul existed before birth. Jesus was born into a world at his time that was already familiar with the idea that life continues beyond the current body. In the early Christianity, theologians such as Origen of Alexandria taught that souls could exist before birth and return to continued growth. However, in 553 CE, the Second Council of Constantinople formally condemned these teachings. They condemned these teachings, my friend, because it was not beneficial to the church. How could they tell you you were going to hell or heaven if you didn't do certain things? If they believed in reincarnation? How could you pay them to keep yourself out of hell? So, throughout centuries, mystics, metaphysicians, and New Thought writers have continued to honor the idea that life is continuous spiritual unfoldment. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of our Unity, says he embraced reincarnation as a tool for spiritual evolution. He wrote, "The rebirth of the soul in new bodies gives it the opportunity to bring forth what God has implanted in it, the perfect image and likeness of the divine." For Fillmore, reincarnation is not about judgment, but about opportunity. Every soul is given the time and circumstances it needs to fully awaken. So did Jesus teach reincarnation? I'll share with you a passage from Mr. Butterworth's book, Discover the Power Within, on page 214. He writes, "Did Jesus teach reincarnation?" He goes on to say, "We must recognize that all Jesus taught or did was certainly not incorporated into the gospel record. The four gospels came into being as the remembered influence of Jesus upon these writers who did not write until many years later, probably about 40. Obviously, they wrote about the things that impressed them the most, the things that seemed most important and most revolutionary in terms of the old law, Old Testament law. The fact that the concept of reincarnation is not mentioned could be explained in either of two ways, because Jesus never mentioned reincarnation. Could be explained in two ways. Either it was no part of the belief of Jesus, or it was such a general accepted belief that there was no reason to comment upon it. We can take our choice of possibilities. But I think it's certainly suggested in the scriptures. If you dive into the scriptures, you will see that it is certainly suggested. In Matthew 11:14, I'll just tell the story as opposed to reading it. In Matthew 11:14, unless you prefer I read it, but in Matthew 11:14, Jesus and his disciples are there, and John the Baptist is in jail. And John the Baptist sends words to Jesus, his disciples, and says, "I hear you're doing great things." And the disciples said, basically, John the Baptist is in jail. And he says, "Yes, but he is the greatest that has come. He is the greatest that has come." You might remember in the scriptures it says, John the Baptist's role was what? To prepare ye the way of the Lord. And he says to him, Jesus says clearly that John the Baptist is Elijah returned. in the Old Testament scriptures, it says that Elijah has to come back before the Messiah will come. And so he's saying, John the Baptist is Elijah. Wow, does that indicate possibility reincarnation? It does to me, the possibility. And then you might remember when Jesus was on his way back to Jerusalem. This is usually told in the Easter story. On the way back to Jerusalem, and they go up into a high mountain, and it's called the Transfiguration. You might remember that story. And one of the visions is Elijah. And he says, Elijah has returned. Has returned. Also, one of my favorites, and I believe that really defines the possibility of reincarnation, is you might remember before Jesus started back to Jerusalem, they're in Caesarea Philippi, and Jesus turns to his disciples. His ministry's not going as well as he wants it to go. And he turns to his disciples and he says, well, who do people say that I am? And some say that you are Jeremiah. Some say that you are Elijah. Some say that you are another prophet. And Jesus looked at him and said, but the famous question that we all have to answer ourselves, but who do you say that I am? And it was Paul that spoke up and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. So it was obvious to me at that point that it was certainly assumed that reincarnation was right there. Well, did the people say I reincarnated as Elijah? I reincarnated as Jeremiah? Who did I reincarnate as? And then you might also remember the story in John 9:2-3. Jesus and his disciples are coming, and they run into the blind man. You remember the blind man? And this man was born blind, did not go blind, he was born blind. And so the disciples asked this question, who sinned? Who sinned? Was it his mother? Was it his father? Did he sin in a previous life? And basically Jesus says, no one sinned in a previous life. He has come into this life to teach, to learn his lessons. And so it was not like the old cause and effect, you happen in this life and you're going to be punished in this life. That's not it at all. He had come back to learn the lessons that he needed to learn. Notice that Jesus does not deny the possibility of past causes. Instead, he redirects to purpose, growth, and divine opportunity. I thought of Helen Keller. She could not see, she was deaf, and she had a miserable life going. And you might remember the story, it was Anne Sullivan, where it taught her how to communicate, how to write, and eventually inspire millions. Whether or not her condition was influenced by past lives, her soul grew, her soul evolved, her soul fulfilled her divine purpose, demonstrating that spiritual evolution continues through every circumstance. Would you say that she came into this expression of life because of sin? Would you say that she came into this expression of life because of her parents had sinned? Of course not. She came into this expression of life to fulfill a purpose, to grow as she did, and to help others grow as well. Dr. Brian Weiss, he was a psychiatrist, and he was the author of Many Lives, Many Masters. Anybody ever heard of that book before? Yes, Many Lives, Many Masters. And he brought the idea of reincarnation into modern psychology. In the early 1980s, one patient under hypnosis, began recalling past life memories, including historical details that she could have not known. And these memories heal lifelong fears and phobias. He concluded, death is transition, not an end. Does that sound familiar? Past life awareness can accelerate healing and spiritual growth. And his work supports what Butterworth and Fillmore describe. Life is a continuous journey of learning and awakening. I think there's some pitfalls also if we concentrate tremendously on reincarnation. I believe if we're not careful, we can use it as escapism. I don't need to work on it this time. I don't really need to work on this. I'm escaping from this. I'm just going to be like the prodigal son, go out into the far country and have a blast. No. See, we can escape from, I'll get it right in the next lifetime. Or we can use it as ego fantasies. Most people that come to me and talk about past life experiences, they are royalty in the past life. If we're not careful, we can look so much to the past life that we're not present in today. And that's when we neglect the present moment. And I believe with all my heart that God is everywhere present within me, within you. But I experience God in the present moment. Butterworth reminds us, it's not the number of lives that matter, but how awake we are in this one. Well, what we know and what we don't know, there's no definite proof that reincarnation exists. No definite proof. There's also no proof that it does not exist. Yet we know that consciousness cannot be destroyed. Consciousness can only be transformed. And perhaps that's proof enough. Life is eternal, and we are part of that flow. So, did Jesus teach reincarnation? As I said, he did not use the word, but he taught the eternal life of the soul. Birth and death are but doors through which we pass on our eternal journey toward full realization of the Christ within. I am an eternal expression of God's life. I am an eternal expression of God's life. Let's affirm that together. I am an eternal expression of God's life. I am ever growing. Together. I am ever going. Life is consciousness. Together, life is consciousness. So before I close, there's a book that I actually found in my library at home. It just jumped out. Have You Ever Lived Other Lives? It's the name of the book. And it's by Ernest Wilson. And Ernest Wilson has been around. He was just a key, huge figure in the unity movement. He had the Founders Church for many years. He taught seminary. He was very influential in our movement. And he writes, at the conclusion of his book, he writes this. He says, I believe in it, meaning reincarnation, frankly, too, because I hope that it is true. Well, let me ask you, don't you believe in the afterlife or whatever your afterlife you believe in? It's true because why? Because you believe in it. You know, it's true for me to believe that the soul is ongoing, ever unfolding in God's light and love. That's true for me because I believe in it. Someone else may not. Someone else may say, when you're dead, you're dead. I know people like that. be interesting to what they say now. They've died, so it'd be wonderful to see what they say. I'm not being cute and curt about it, but it's like, anyway. So he says, he goes on to say, I want to believe that God gives us another chance, many more chances, if need be, to embody the ideal he has for me. You might remember Jesus says, be ye perfect. Remember that? As your Father in heaven is perfect. And he's saying, I don't know if one lifetime is going to get me to perfection. It's certainly, yeah. So that's what he's saying. The way I feel about all this is if I had worn out a precious garment and laid it aside, he should say, here, my child, I will give you a fresh new garment. You have another day, another opportunity. Go out from your Father's house in the world to sense and do your best and be worthy of your sonship to me. I will be with you. I shall not forsake you, and I will help you express what is in my heart, that I have always seen you and that I love you. You shall declare the world the glory that is beginning you and with me before the world was. So, your homework this week is to just continue the discussion. Do I believe in reincarnation? Did Jesus teach reincarnation? But more important than that is ask yourself the question, what lesson might my soul be learning in this lifetime? What lesson is my soul learning in this lifetime? I'm going to say it again. What lesson is my soul learning in this lifetime? You can have more than one thing. I can assure you I've got several. You guys are awesome. I love you. I bless you. I'm so grateful for you, regardless of what you believe about reincarnation. I'm so grateful for you. And know that without a doubt that we are one in spirit and God is always present with us. Death cannot separate us from the love of God. And so it is. Amen.